How Putin uses fake offices and pre-recorded videos known as Putin's canned footage to deceive the public. That's the topic we'll discuss today with my guest. Stanislav Belkovsky, political analyst and publicist, is joining me now in the studio. Stanislav, it's great to have you with us again.
Hello, thank you for your invitation again.
Stanislav, Russian investigative journalist just maybe last week or 2 weeks ago revealed something quite surreal, I would say. It turns out that Russian dictator Putin has 3 identical offices, exact copies in different parts of Russia, in Novoogarevo, Sochi and Valdai, and they found this out by analyzing Kremlin videos and TV footage, noticing tiny, details like the shape of a door handle, a seam on the wall, or the color of a desk. So my question is, why does Putin need 3 identical offices?
I think at least 3.
Okay.
We should not forget his residence in Gorny Altai, for instance, which in my opinion should be 100% similar to others. And maybe the number of Putin's offices all throughout the country, I think, is more than a dozen, not just 3. And the basic contradiction of Putin's presidency is between his public role as a number one official and bureaucrat of the country, formally democratically elected, though we understand that this procedure has nothing to do with real democracy, and Putin's hatred to his public obligations. He's not a man of public. He tries to conceal himself, to hide himself from public view. And in his opinion, all the serious questions should be resolved in serious matters discussed just far away from any public attention. That's why, but to a certain extent, he is forced to use public tools and to be open to some public attention, but has done his best for the his 26 already years in power to protect himself from real, not staged, not self-invented public attention. That's why another largest Putin's problem is his abundant interest to personal security. It's something being deeply rooted in his personal psychology and in his fears and impressions of his childhood in Leningrad, connected with innumerable dangers of the surrounding world. That's why at his childhood he decided to become initially a boxer. Then, when this attempt to become boxer failed, as he depicted it very eloquently in his communications with different sportsmen and especially handicapped people who'd taken part in Paralympic Games several years ago, Putin decided to choose judo. And so this judo psychology, judo philosophy has shaped himself, his attitude and priorities to a very considerable extent. So he does really believe that the destiny of Russia, because there is no Putin, no Russia, as the Russian lower house speaker Vyacheslav Volodin depicted it. And this is, though ridiculous to a certain degree, at the same time 90% truth, because if anything happened to Vladimir Putin, Russia and its current sense and essence would cease to exist, undoubtedly and inevitably. But of course, since there is no Russia without Putin, Putin should pay very much attention to his personal securities in such way to conceal to the utmost where he really is, to protect himself from any kind of attempts, not just armed attempts on his life, but from some harmful energetic sources and attempts to use harmful energies around him. He has many specialists in this mysterious field and so on and so forth. And that's why the biggest secret is where the leader really is really located right now. That's why he needs numerous residences, and the public scene in those residences should not differ one from another.
Yeah, but Stanislav, do you know how many kids were going to judo and still has never become as monsters as dictator Putin?
Of course, Vladimir Putin was chosen first by Anatoly Sobchak as mayor of St. Petersburg in early 1990s, as his closest ally, then by Yeltsin's family. Of course, it doesn't stem from judo. But judo emphasizes some approaches of Putin. The philosophy of judo formulated by the founders of this sports discipline, yes, is an important part of Putin's thinking, not just in the field of security, but in politics as well.
But have we ever seen other dictators creating this kind of stage illusion to hide their real location or simulate activity?
Yes, I think in humanity's history, undoubtedly. I think in the 20th century, dictators like Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin, to a very considerable extent. So maybe we should think it through, analyzing the former centuries. But it's quite usual even for the modern world. I think the Chinese, Korean leaders, to a very considerable extent, the Turkish leader, and so on. Everywhere where the destiny of power is so highly, so dramatically dependent on the personal security and personal health of just one person, so such peculiar technologies are inevitably used.
But also, this so-called Putin's preserves, Kremlin media keep releasing pre-recorded videos of Putin's meetings, and they are pretending they are live. And the investigations by Sistema, they found at least 10 such canned appearances this year of Putin. I mean, why does the Kremlin needs that? The location for security reasons, especially, I know it's since 2024 or 2023 when Ukraine started this drone campaign against Russia and deep inside Russia, but pre-recorded videos.
No, the security problems emerged in Putin's life, in his childhood, not when he became president, and furthermore, not with the start of the full-scale war against Ukraine, of course. It's one of the basic ideas of his existence.
Yes.
The security, how to protect it. Of course, it's not just a role of typical dictator, it's specifics of Putin's personal psychology as well, and to the utmost. But as I mentioned, Putin hates his public obligations. He doesn't like public life. He doesn't like media attention and so on. And from time to time, he wants, and is really psychologically forced, to disappear from the public eye. But during those period of times, the powers, the Kremlin, should show him as an active leader. Because the myth, the legend created by Kremlin is that Putin works at least 20 hours a day and sleeps just 4 hours a day. It's, in my opinion, is rather doubtful, because sleeping 4 hours a day is very dangerous for the health, and especially the mental one. But for some reasons, Kremlin is not so much disrupted by this vision, and that doesn't understand how doubtful this construction is. But so showing Putin every day, everywhere, participating in innumerable public events and so on and so forth, is an important part of showing him as an immortal leader, which is so, though not so young, but so healthy, so active, so prepared for 24 hours a day work. So nobody should even think that something wrong could happen to Vladimir Putin and his health preventing him from doing his job anymore.
Could it be potentially like this, that Putin is dead, but the Kremlin, maintaining the illusion that he's alive and posting the videos?
Yes, yes, because Putin from time to time should get some rest from his public obligations, but the Kremlin cannot disclose it. Kremlin cannot review it. And of course, that's why those pre-recorded videos are of paramount importance for all 26 years of Putin's power. It's not a new invention of the several past years, of course.
Yeah, but the Russian journalists, the investigators, they were kind of surprised by what they have discovered. So
I was not surprised, and I think the people who observe Putin's activities for all of his power period were not surprised as well. Of course, we have no objective to get any proof of those pre-recorded videos, but it has been widely known for all quarter of century Putin is in power.
Yes. And Stanislav, I want to get back to our previous conversation. We just partially touched the question of your own interpretation of the abbreviation China in one of your interviews. And you said it's corruption, hypocrisy, incompetence, nepotism, and arrogance. And it seems to me, Stanislav, that your definition quite accurately describes not only China, but the modern world.
Yes, it concerns modern world, and I emphasize that it was not about China. It's just a coincidence.
Okay.
Abbreviation is China. Or just another abbreviation is 5G, 5 grounds of the modern elites. Of course, this concerns the Occidental elites. And this was the real reason and mechanism at the same time why voters prefer politicians like anti-establishmentarian, anti-elite politicians like Donald Trump, or vice versa, the same kind of anti-elite politician of another wing like Zohran Mamdani in New York, for instance.
According to Politico, I guess, journalists, they were assuming that Ukraine right now would go and would agree for any type of a deal. Are we seriously in that type of trouble that we could agree on any potential deal that aren't even good for Ukraine?
Any final deal of this work, it cannot be 100% brilliant for Ukraine, of course, because it would put stop to the 4 years of dreadful war which Ukraine has conducted against the more powerful enemy. Russian Federation, the resources of which, of course, are much larger than Ukrainian ones. But now this army minister of the US who's come to Kiev, as far as I understand, as a university group mate of Vice President J.D. Vance. So the Washington has changed its principal envoy. This guy comes instead of Kit Kellogg, who was very sympathetic to this Ukraine, maybe more than Washington expects it right now. We remember that Kit Kellogg's daughter, Megan Mops, was an organizer of some charitable organization supporting Ukraine during this war. And as far as Politico tells us, there is a plan of 28 points, some similar to the Donald Trump peace plan for Gaza. I don't see so much in common between Ukraine and Gaza Strip, but let's see what is really meant by this. I think the key question is not the corruption scandal itself, though of course it's been very harmful to Ukraine and the reputation of the currently existing Ukrainian power. The key question is how much resources Ukraine still have to conduct this war, including first and foremost mobilization resource. And so maybe Washington and Moscow, which, as we discussed it several times, have many things in common and do still want to create this Trump-Putin pact concerning Russia's natural resources and some huge projects in Arctic. And that's why, as we are told by leading international media, Stephen Witkoff and Kirill Dmitriev are involved in preparing this pact, because both of them are responsible for the business elements, business components of relationships between Trump and Putin. and not politics, not war itself, business, big multi-billion dollars business. Is the ground of that, just like the nature and essence of relationship between Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia and its Prince Mohammed bin Salman just visited Washington. And promising $1 trillion investment into the U.S. economy, which, in my opinion, is far from reality. It's quite unrealistic, but Trump likes the figures, like such public relations constructions, regardless of how close to the reality they actually are. So Donald Trump and his allies maintaining this delicate relationship with Putin do think that maybe Ukraine cannot survive this winter under the growing pressure from Russian spot and increasing strikes on its energetic infrastructure. That's why the corruption scandal, of course, is a separate reason, but not top one.
Yeah, but amid the scandal, Russian propagandists were saying that, look, after this one, European leaders will stop helping Ukraine, will stop sending money to the weapon, to social support and rebuilding infrastructure. But now the rhetoric of Russian propagandists, if you saw it, just changing, because what we saw, the Berlin, they are sending billions of euros, and now Spain, they just signed a new contract with Ukraine and President Zelensky. Well, Scandinavian countries is always on the top of the list who are helping Ukraine. So the thing is, it's evolving. And now Russian propagandists are saying, oh, look, they're helping Ukraine because they also, having their part from that money.
No, I don't think we should pay too much attention to what Russian propaganda could say. Because it can change from time to time, but the reasons and the roots of this propaganda are quite understandable. Of course, Europe considers the war in Ukraine as an inalienable component of its own destiny, as the first stage of potential war between Putin's Russian Federation and European Union itself. And that is the basic reason to support Ukraine, both financially and militarily, regardless of those corruption scandals, though, of course, this so-called Mendish Gate brought very important harm to Ukraine and Ukrainian power reputation, but at the same time, in my opinion, emphasize how efficient the democracy could be. Because large-scale corruption we can observe in any of post-Soviet countries. But it's hardly imaginable that such disclosures of corruption could take place, for instance, in the modern Russia, or some other authoritarian countries of the post-imperial space. And so Ukraine still proves that it's efficient statehood, which was the different power institutions counterbalancing each other, and in such ways the corruption is controllable, both by democratic institutions and public opinion. And but for Europe, this war would inevitably go on. For Washington, it's now some other position, and as far as we know it from leading media, as we've understood it, regardless of this leading media, by ourselves for many months since Donald Trump has gotten back to White House, that for Trump, European Union, the United Europe, is still deeply considered as an opponent, as a collective opponent, and especially as far as European elites are concerned, which, in Trump's opinion, did their best to prevent him from coming to power, staying in power, and getting back to power. And in such way, Trump wants, on one hand, to ignore the Europe's position to the most sensitive issues of this war, on another hand, to create problems for Europe, especially in the energy field. And now we realize more and more then those sanctions against Russia's oil corporations, Rosneft and Lukoil, had the main objective not connected with the Ukrainian war itself. The basic objective is to make Europe much more dependent in the energy field onto the United States. And to Washington's will. Now we see that maybe some corporations or investment institutions close to Trump would purchase the international assets of Lukoil Corporation and in such way penetrate into another large segment of European oil and oil products market. That's the basic idea of those sanctions rather than to put stop to Ukrainian war. That's why the gap between the US and EU positions would still be wide enough.
Yes, and speaking about Trump, how would you assess, I don't remember whether I was asking you that, his, negotiation framework that he has built, that Witkoff travels to Moscow, Kellogg goes to Ukraine, and then everything lands on Trump's desk for him to decide something and announce something. How do you see that?
Now we see this young army minister instead of Kellogg, really, I think. Yes, I don't know.
So, okay, so there is a change, right?
It's a change because General Kellogg is a typical representative of U.S. deep state, though fully loyal to Trump, of course, but nonetheless perceived as a typical representative of the deep state, was in the opinion of politicians like J.D. Vance, may be too loyal to Ukraine. So now he is replaced by a person oriented on J.D. Vance's position, which is mainly anti-European. As we learned, if you remember, from those signal conversations occasionally disclosed by Michael Waltz, former Trump's security advisor, now UN representative to the United Nations. And so when they discussed to attack or not to attack the Houthi forces in Aden's Gulf, so J.D. Vance and Defense now War Minister Pete Hegseth explains that so they are so tired with and of this constant support for Europe. So it was not considered within the framework of support Israel or bringing peace to the Middle East. No, to maintain the Europe's logistic chains through beating Houthis, and that's why the new representative Kit Kellogg may be still is in charge of communications with Europe and European countries. But new representative in Kiev reflects that U.S. can do something without Europe and ignoring the principal objections of European Union with regard to further scenario of putting stop to this war in Ukraine.
Well, I don't know. We'll see, because where it's going to lead us. Because we have now today in Kyiv, as I told you, high-level military delegation from the Washington, D.C. visiting Kyiv. I don't know. Rumors are saying they came to Ukraine with with a Kit Kellogg peace plan, right? So I don't know what's going to happen after that.
Kit Kellogg peace plan, I think, is over for.
It's over, right?
For some time, yes. And then, as we know, Vladimir Putin has given Donald Trump some suggestions and some vision in Alaska during the Alaska meeting. Though the key problem for Donald Trump is Putin hopeful to force Ukraine for some semi-surrender after this dreadful winter. So he didn't want to put stop to the war right now. While Trump, regardless of any of his positions and his willingness to deal with Russia in the field of natural resources and so on, still is forced to be for this armistice and for a ceasefire as soon as possible, because it's a kind of his obligations toward a considerable part of his constituents and considerable part of the Republican political establishment, now being very irritated and annoyed again around Trump's position with Epstein files. And now Trump has growing problems connected not with his traditional political opponents and enemies like mainstream Democrats or more radical politicians like Zoran Mamdani or Bernie Sanders. Trump has growing problems with his own camp, with MAGA camp, which is bitterly disappointed with Trump's willingness to become greatest of all times through vast America's interference with numerous conflicts all around the world. Though the MAGA movement and the America First coalition pinned their greatest hopes that Trump would set back from all those interference of America. So, and just the most recent interview of Tucker Carlson, the informal leader of this MAGA camp, opponents to Trump now, rather than supporters, with semi-Nazist Nick Fuentes, reflects this. And Trump could not even criticize sharply that interview because he's not interested in broadening the gap between himself and MAGA camp, the at least isolationist wing of MAGA camp and America First. And we've seen this conflict with Marjorie Taylor Greene, which maybe is the Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, which maybe is not so enormous politician. But at the same time, this Congresswoman reflects some ideas and some ideological priorities of considerable part of Trump's supporters. That's why,
right.
By all means, Trump cannot put on the table any deal with Vladimir Putin without putting stop to this war.
Yeah, absolutely. Stanislav, thank you so much for your in-depth answers, for your insight and information, and I hope to see you again in our studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Entirely at your disposal anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.